Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show to talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 3 of Outer Range. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, a lot of interesting points to kind of jump off of. First and foremost, let's talk about the fact is Joy ended up getting the DNA, the blood ran on the buckle, and now she knows the blood is Rhett's. And so she asks Rhett about it, but he acts like he has no idea what that's all about. And so she just lets him go and do his bull riding thing, and he ends up winning and getting first place. But obviously, he ended up telling his dad, it's like, right, they know it's my blood on that belt buckle. So whether it's a combination of drinking plus guilt over his involvement in the whole Trevor thing, especially because Joy's kind of closing in to some extent, she's asking questions. So, or whether it's just being around Maria, or just, it seems like drinking's kind of an issue that Rhett already kind of goes through. Plus popping the painkillers, I was like, you're not supposed to mix alcohol and meds like that. So I'm like, that's interesting. She's like, oh yeah, that could be a dangerous stuff. He's like, I know. I was like, has he struggled with that in the past? Has that been an issue? Or has he just been like, yeah, I know, just because I know, because, does he say, I know just because I have the knowledge of knowing that? Or is it from personal experience he knows about that? It was kind of a stupid thing, considering you've potentially, and the police have their eyes on you for this whole Trevor disappearance thing. Joy's not really ready to pull the trigger on that, but she does have questions. But Rhett pissing on that dude's, that cop's car was like, yeah, it was, to be fair, he already started pissing and he can't stop. Also, I'm like, that could also lead to a complicated thing too, because you pissing in public can count as indecent exposure too, so I think that could end up put you on like the, sex offender registry, if I'm not mistaken. I think you can end up on that, like, pissing in public like that. But luckily, Rhett was able to go just because Joy was going to cut up some slack. But she does ask the question. Now, it's going to be easier if you tell me what's what, because I'm eventually going to ask questions at the bar. And, all right, and Rhett opens up about everything. And he's like, right, me and Trevor got into a fight. That's how my blood got on his buckle. But beyond that, we walked away. He's like, well, was anyone else there? And he can't say the truth. Because, for one, he can't say, oh, Perry was there. Because that will implement Perry and everything that went down. Because eventually, if it ever does come down to it, Perry will get brought up in questioning. This at least alleviates this. It definitely puts Rhett in a very bad place. He said he didn't want to be the one that just takes a fall for it, but he is in this complicated space. But he also can't bring up the fact is Maria was a witness to all that, a witness to the fight, and the fact is they walked away. He walked away because she would also be a witness to, well, the last person I saw outside with Trevor when Rhett walked away was Perry. So there's that. Plus, he'd also basically have to ask her to lie, and they're just kind of hitting it off. I love that whole situation. I'm surprised that drunk situation didn't spiral out worse than it did when that guy bumped into her. He's like, yo, apologize to her. I thought, oh, man, this is the worst time to start popping off. Luckily, nothing happened because he's so drunk he ended up falling. So, and they kind of laughed about it. So, luckily, nothing happened there. But it doesn't matter because he pissed on a cop car and still found himself here in the first place. So, that was kind of an interesting development. Once again, he's not drinking, and I think it's his way of dealing with everything, was always drinking, and now before it's probably just kind of like a pastime, and just maybe the stresses of everything just made him drink before, but now even more stress is upon him with the whole Trevor thing, and trying to help out his family, and knowing they covered up a crime, and having to lie to everyone around them, so I think all of that's probably the extra reason why he was drinking, but still. Especially knowing that Joy was asking all these questions. So Joy kind of lets him go in that regard. But at the same time they were there, Royal stole the badge. Not badge, but the buckle. Because he's going to do whatever it takes to protect his family. He did so disposing of evidence before. He's going to continue doing so. And I love that on the ride back, he ends up telling Rhett, it's like, right, I never told you guys, I told you that my parents died when I was young. It's like partially true. His dad died. His mom is still alive, but after his dad died, he couldn't really deal with it, so he ended up running away, and he never came back. He says, I haven't seen my mom nor my younger sister, which immediately your brain goes like, okay, so is that what we're going to find out? That they don't really remember each other, but we're going to find out that Autumn's his younger sister or something like that. The fact is they set that up, and it's like, it seems like there's some deeper correlation and connection between Royal and Autumn. I don't know what to make of that, especially the whole like, oh, like us at 9 years old not really remembering much, like there's something there. It would also play like maybe why Autumn's in the middle and mix of all of this, because maybe it's something in their blood that's making all this weird stuff happen in their connection to a lot of this stuff. But I think maybe they sent it, I don't know what I'm saying. That conversation was most supposed to implicate that, I guess, make his son understand, because he had this conversation earlier with Rhett about, Rhett's like, oh, what? You don't want to have those conversations around, you don't want me to talk about any of this, my doubts about you really being able to handle everything around Perry and Mom, because Perry's fragile. It's like, Perry isn't fragile, you and him are different, you're more like me. And I think Rhett didn't really know how to take that, because he was almost like, oh, whoa. Because I guess his dad is like, the reason why I treat your brother a little differently than you is because you and me, we're the same. We kind of almost speak the same language. And he's just like, your brother is more like probably akin and attuned with your mom. So I think it's more like you're kind of mine and he's kind of hers. Like maybe that's how he was kind of painting it. And I think this is him trying to say like, I get it. When you're kind of lost, you're willing to kind of not be in your right state of mind. But he's like, right, regardless of it, I need you to be more careful, but know that I've got your back through it all. Any recklessness that you might do, I've got your back because I love you. Like, that's what it seemed like that might have been getting across, but maybe I was reading that whole scene wrong. Still, I also thought another interesting thing, too, is Autumn. How, well, speaking of her, how she's now met, like, half the family. Because she already, like, she had run-ins with Royal, like, both, the first episode, the second episode, and this episode. So that's just going to be a continuous run-in between them. But last episode, she ran into Amy. And this episode, she ran into Perry. So I'm curious if she's eventually going to run into Rhett. And, Rhett was with his dad when they ran. So never mind. It's like, yeah, the only person in the family she hasn't met at this point in time is Cecilia. So I'm assuming that's going to happen at some point. But she ended up going to a bar and ended up meeting Perry. And I think Perry was trying to have that conversation with her. Like, right, I know you, how long do you plan on staying on our land? Try to almost lead the conversation to an excuse of, oh, maybe you shouldn't be on our land anymore. But that conversation got cut off because she asked about, I was like, I see your wedding ring. You must be married. It's like, oh, married 10 years. My wife's been missing for 9 months. And it was interesting how Autumn tried to help him and give him advice about, right, she's like, I know what it's like to basically be walking through the darkness, trying to, like, hold on to the wall, trying to find the light switch. But she's like, but that's, you know, just when you feel like you're lost, you're kind of giving up hope, that's when you find the light switch and flip it on. Kind of saying that it may take a while, but you'll eventually find your way past all this. I think it almost played, because at first when they were introduced, introduced to each other, I was like, are they going to try and do like a Perry and Autumn, like set that up type of thing? I wasn't sure about that. That was before I even thought about the whole, maybe she's Royal's sister or something. Like, that was before then, because if she ends up being like, I don't think, because I feel like she would have to be like, I mean, she'd have to be like, well, he said younger. We never really went into like how young. But I was still, you would assume she'd be a little bit older than what she is if she ends up being a royal sister or something. You know, that's why I'm like, I don't know. That was just, like I said, just a random theory of me just throwing that out there, wondering since they set that up, or that could just be like meaning his sister's going to come into this story in some shape or form, or maybe his mom will. Who knows? But I wonder, does Cecilia know that story? Because it seems like you would assume Rhett and Perry and Amy don't, but it makes you wonder, does Cecilia know about, like, his mom still being alive and him also having a sister? So regardless, I just thought that was interesting advice, and but my point was too is like Rhett gave Perry that advice back in episode 1 about trying to move on past the whole Rebecca thing. Which, speaking of Rebecca, Cecilia thought she saw her, which you really like, right, that would be weird for her to be around, just it's still in town and stuff. That would be weird, but I think she talked about, like, it's because the stress of everything going on. Even the fact that she's like, she tried to pray to God, but she just couldn't feel it anymore. And she knows Royal isn't like the biggest believer in all that, but for her, it has always meant something. And now all of this is kind of taking away kind of her faith and her belief just because of everything spiral out. And Royal was like, what do you want me to do? And I think for her, it's just like, I want you to, I guess, talk to me a little bit, because like every point in this conversation, she's kind of the last one to find out about stuff. Last one to find out about Trevor. Last one to find out about Autumn, you know? So just interesting developments on that front. Circling back a little bit with the Joy situation, her continuing her run for sheriff. We meet her opponent, Trudy, and kind of the bad blood between them. I love that whole thing of like, so guys, whose canine plan do you like more? And one of the guys was like, they're both pretty good. I was like, you hear that, Trudy? Mark says mine is better. Thanks, Mark. But also, Trudy's coming at this whole thing of, oh yeah, like Trevor's disappearance. And I guess that's why she was already doing her part to play in it, but I think Joy's probably doubling down even more because she knows Trudy's going to take this opportunity to try and sweep. Like, the fact is that he's like, right, I'm going to do my part, you're going to do yours. And she was saying like, right, let's just keep each other informed with this whole Trevor thing. So I guess that made her go like, right, I guess I got to look into this even more than I already kind of was about to start looking into it. So she also went to go see Frank because she needs his pull and backing to become sheriff. And Frank is weird, and he talks about, like, right, there's these caves, and someone heard noises in the cave, and it ended up being a mastodon. And it's like, wait, what? And it's like, if you're going to become sheriff, what are you going to do about that? You have Trudy being like, what? She got this look on her face like, what the fuck does that even mean? What are you talking about, my guy? She has that look, and she's so confused, and it's like, that was a weird conversation, but maybe there's more to that. Maybe that plays into, like, because we're dealing with a lot of timey-wimey stuff around this episode, around this series, so maybe there are things slipping in and out of different time periods and stuff like from the past, coming into present day, or just like Royal, when he got pushed into the hole by Autumn, ending up in the futures, you know, so I don't know. Maybe there's some correlation there. There's also the whole situation with Wayne still being adamant about that property he wants to buy. He wants to buy the Western Pastures, which even Luke's asking, why do you want to know? And he was like, God, you're just like your mother, which I'm like, oh, that seemed like that was kind of a little bit of a sore subject of Wayne bringing that up. But it's like, right, stop asking questions. Offer Royal whatever you would like. Offer him $1 million, which Luke is like, no, with Trevor being missing and it seemed like you don't care, I'm not going to offer him anything because he knows they're responsible for his brother's disappearance. It's like, right, I got to find out how. Which is so, I guess because of their family's issues, he knew it was going to come up, but it's like, Maria didn't say anything and no one else did. I guess maybe Trevor asked around the bar and asked anyone else, but he never actually specifically pointed to Rhett necessarily. And that was also something Rhett had brought up to Joy. He's like, oh, did they tell you that they like were acting weird and rolled up at our property and broke through our fence? It's like, I want to say last episode Joy might have talked about having heard about what they were up to. So, but that whole conversation continues to bring up the interesting point of why is Wayne so interested in that property? He has to know something about that hole. Like, has he done some time traveling of his own? But why now? Maybe it's one of those things of like, maybe there's some gaps in people's memories that all of a sudden started coming back. So maybe Wayne knows something's up, but he doesn't know that Royal is tiptoeing towards it. Like, maybe there's something else related to all of, like, the whole maybe is a symptom of something else. It's a representation of something else that's happening on that property that maybe Wayne is aware of this supernatural or science fictional thing that's happening. He just doesn't know the specifics about it, like the whole itself. Maybe it's something of that aspect. Then you also have Billy being the weirdo. The moment he picked up Amy when she was on her way walking home after the bus dropped her off, you're like, this is weird. And you're just like, cool, yeah, kid, be in my truck where I'm, offering you dip. And I'm also, like, got my, like, glove box open where my gun is. And then he does this thing again of, like, he has that second time is, like, him singing randomly. And you're just like, what? Billy's weird. Then you have Royal still bottling a lot of this stuff up. He hasn't told anyone the truth about the whole or what he experienced going to the future. He actually opens up to Autumn about it. And it makes you wonder, like, looking back now at Autumn when she looked at him, she didn't look too surprised to see him. Maybe she already knew, like, oh, this must have been the point that in the past when I pushed him into the hole, he ended up here. Now, the question is, he went to, like, the future. This is, once again, where we get to this timey-wiminess of it all. He went into not only, like, the future, like, how does that work? Because of the timey-wiminess of it all. Because this is, apparently he died 2 years ago from when he was in the future. It's like, oh, 2 years ago you died in my arms, is what Cecilia told him. So the question is that supposed to be based on, hey, you went to the future, you always go to the future and end up jumping back in a hole and coming back to the past, and eventually you'll die, and it's an Ouroboros eating it's a snake eating its own tail. It's all it's all reciprocal. It's all part of the loop. So that's why I'm like, does Autumn know about it? Because she's like, right, you told me you came to the future. Now I see that's what this is all about. Once again, is that a cult that she's a part of? She hinted last episode that she has been in a cult before. Whether she still is, that's a whole thing. But she's trying to get answers out of Royal, saying, like, he's asking, why did you push me into that hole? She's like, sorry about that. I just wanted to know what would happen. I'm like, but why? Did she feel like something overcame her? Because immediately she felt bad about it, especially when she ran into Amy last episode. But then, like, the moment she found out Royal was okay, she felt some sigh of relief. Why? Like, did you automatically feel some connection with Royal and now you're like, oh, I think I killed him? But they're like, oh, no, oh my God, thank God he's okay. Like, why did you have that, like, sigh of relief? I mean, one, because you didn't murder him. I guess there's that. But there's also, maybe there's something else to that. So Royal was like, right, you stay away from my family, but you also keep what you saw and what you know to yourself. And she's like, what did you see? And he's like, I experienced time. And she's like, oh, did you go to the past? No, the future. Did you see me? And he's like, right, we can keep talking about everything I saw as long as you promise to keep quiet and you can stay here for as long as possible. So they shake on it, but as they shake hands, the mountain disappears behind him. Because he also focuses on the necklace she's got, because it seems like she was digging on the property earlier and near that symbol on those rocks where she met Amy last episode. I think a stone or whatever. Maybe that's something she already had, or maybe it's a stone from, because it was something she found. It looked like it was a rock, but I don't know if the stone around her neck is connected to that rock or whether that's something she already had. But Royal was looking at it, and then a mountain disappeared. You see that Joy sees the mountain disappear, and then, like, apparently other people saw it too. I mean, it's a whole freaking mountain, and it's probably, like, there's plenty of places in town you could probably see that mountain from. So quite a few people apparently witnessed that, but they're also like, maybe I'm just crazy because it disappeared and then it reappeared. But it didn't reappear until Royal and Autumn stopped shaking hands. So there's some connection there where whatever's going on kind of like gets supercharged around them, that around each other. Maybe the whole is just God, what's the word I want to use? Maybe the power kind of flows from them individually, and maybe together it gets stronger. Maybe the whole is just, I don't know, maybe it's maybe it's a manifestation of what's kind of their power or something. Maybe the time stuff is their power, and together they made time rewind to the point, because that mountain wasn't always there. It took over some point of time for it to form and be made. Maybe they undid it in that time for, like, they rewound that mountain specifically to the point where it didn't exist. I don't know what to quite make it at, because it's not like it fully disappeared. It kind of turned to dust, so it's almost like there's almost like time particles in the air from where it was, because they kind of cause a bit of a time anomaly, or not necessarily an anomaly, but it kind of caused like a time event, and it's like, oh, rewind, and the particle stays in the air, and they ended up reverting it back to present day. That's my best explanation for it at this point in time. Is it a good explanation? No, but that's how my mind tries to make sense of it. So it also seems Royal's not telling her everything, because she's like, what's wrong? He's like, nothing, and doesn't tell her about what just happened. So he's trying to figure everything out, because he's also, for now he hasn't told her, but maybe eventually he will, everything he saw when he went to the future. So once again, that's where I also kind of getting into that timey-wimey thing of like, right, because it is the thing of, well, you technically went to the future, so how is there a time, how did you die 2 years ago when you got sent to the future? You aren't there present day living your life, so that shouldn't exist. Once again, I think it's all part of a loop of he's meant to go to the future, find out the truth, and try to change things in the past, but he still eventually ends up dying. It just all ends up being a loop and a circle, and maybe it means all things with once again learning from what he saw in the future and trying to balance all that, keep it to himself, while also potentially changing it so that that future doesn't happen, so that when Wayne is like, yo, we're trying to buy that property, which Luke isn't trying to let him get that right now. We'll see if that influences things in some shape or form, because once again, for him to just like pop out of nowhere in the future, well, not out of nowhere, he was there, and in the future for him just to out of nowhere shoot Royal, even though Royal had nothing to do, he covered up Trevor's murder, but he had nothing to do with it. But maybe that was just Luke getting revenge, trying to get revenge on the entire family, or maybe because he specifically thinks Royal's the one that killed Trevor. Speaking of Trevor, we do see him at the end, so you're like, okay, which I'm not too surprised by, because I'm like, right, Royal made his way back, and that was also the thing. I was like, right, could that your shirt, the belt buckle now, and Trevor's body end up somewhere else? And it does. But the question is, Royal got back because he jumped back into the hole. Like, does that mean that the time travel is temporary? Like, do you have to jump back in a hole, or is it a thing of eventually, no matter what circumstances, whatever's thrown into time is temporarily displaced? So something in the past could end up, maybe something present day could end up in the past or the future. Maybe the hole doesn't just go to the future, maybe it also goes to the past. Because once again, it's like, well, how does time work in this continuity of, is it kind of the notion of, is time a single line? Is it a Jeremy Bearimy? Or is it, time is technically happening all at once type of thing? So did Trevor's body pop back present day because that's just the power of this hole? Or did someone find his body and toss it back into the hole because they knew about the time travel element? So was it like Autumn, or was it someone else? Questions like that. And so Royal calls up Joy and is like, yo, Amy was hiking and she found Trevor's body and he's dead. Just when Luke busts into her office, was like, yo, the blood is Rhett's. We both know it. Once again, I think it is suspicious that he knows that. He hasn't run into Rhett since episode 1, since the bar. That was the only time last time they were in the same room together, was like when he walked past their table at the bar. So there's that. So why is he so adamant that it was Rhett? There's got to be something more at play there. So, but also Royal claimed he got rid of the body. So it's like, right, you said you got rid of the body, so why is the body there? Is that where you hid the body? Where's the shirt? Where's the belt buckle? He can't really go off explaining, well, I tossed it in a magical time hole and somehow it magically popped up here. It's like he's trying to keep all that from his family as he tries to figure this all out on his own. So maybe he'll kind of, since he will potentially be opening up to Amy, maybe they can bounce some ideas off of each other about how this whole thing works. But we'll ultimately have to wait and see where the next episode takes us. Luckily, obviously, like I mentioned last week, it is 2 episodes getting released a week. So episode 4 is already out. So I'm going to watch it after this and see where everything ends up taking us. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.